Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome to a new FNAF video, and this is the original story of FNAF Security Breach. So yeah, this was it both was and wasn't a suggestion I got, because I literally saw this in my suggestion feeds today, and I was originally going to watch it, but then shortly after I initially discovered it, I also saw that it had just been suggested, so I'm going to count this as a half of a suggestion. And this was suggested in my Discord server by Tiskazuto, along with a lot of other things. Wow. And I mean several things, actually. Like, this is the first video that John FNAF has put out in a while. Like, if I look, the last thing he put out that wasn't, like, Secret of the Mimic related was the big twist of FNAF Sister Location. That was half a year ago, as, like, an actual video. And, like, obviously he's played, like, Secret of the Mimic and Secret of the Mimic VR and stuff like that. But this is his first, like, video in, like, honestly, a while. And a title like that, The Original Story of Security Breach. I mean, yeah, that is the question, isn't it? Because, I mean, for those that don't know, Security Breach famously was kind of a mess in development because Scott didn't actually tell Steelwool what the plot of the game was going to be. And yeah, he famously just told them things to include and where to kind of include them, and they kind of worked backwards from that and kind of made their own thing, which, I mean, on the one hand, I can kind of see where Scott was coming from, because, I mean, with how rabid, especially back then, the FNAF fandom was for lore, I guess he was being, like, very paranoid about, like, potential leaks and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, did he not understand that it's kind of hard for somebody to make a game that kind of focuses on lore when they themselves don't know the lore? Honestly, I don't know. It's been several years at this point since Security Breach came out, and we're basically stuck with it. And from last I heard, they're basically kind of keeping what they have and kind of like working around it. And I think from last I heard, they were kind of using the books to try to fix up the lore, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'd have to assume that this video is with John going back to Security Breach and kind of trying to figure out what potentially the original story for Security Breach even was supposed to be. And that combined with the, God, what was it? The Cawthon cut mod that somebody made several months ago for Security Breach that, like, reintroduced, like, a lot of different hallways and just a lot of different cut stuff from the game. So those two combined, I have to wonder, like, how is John doing this? Is it purely just, you know, speculation where he's saying, oh, what we had in like, Security Breach, and then, like, remixing them to try to make more sense than the kind of mess we initially got? Or is it more, like, data mining and interviews? Honestly, again, I don't know. So let's actually get this thing started and see, you know, how exactly, you know, potentially what the mess of Security Breach was even supposed to be in the first place. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video link to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because most of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my next big goal is hopefully at 10,000 subscribers. And if you want to support me but don't feel confident about becoming a YouTube or Patreon member, feel free to use the Super Thanks option underneath all of my videos. Yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
I had a specific story for this in mind, okay, for Security Breach, I really did, and it is very different than the one that got in the game, and I think a part of that is the way that I conveyed that to Steelwool.
So as we're building the game, you know, I get an email from Scott that says, hey, put this stuff in the game, like, examine it as a producer would do, and I say, I have no idea what any of this means. He goes, yeah, put it in the game. Don't worry, I know.
Yeah, again, like, I mean, I can kind of understand, you know, being hands-off and letting the creatives do their stuff, but at the same time, like, you'd think Scott would say, hey, this is the plot of the game, like, I want this, and this happen as plot beats, we'll write the script, or we'll write the script together, for, the story stuff, and then, like, send it to me, I'll look over it, give you notes, you know, that sort of stuff. But no, like, he just seemed to be completely hands-off with it entirely. I'm just like, I'm so... Ugh.
Scott Cawthon is super secretive when it comes to the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, and in order to keep everything a secret, he didn't tell Steelwool the story of Security Breach. Instead, he only gave them pieces of the story he was trying to tell.
I was trying to tell Steelwool to do specific things throughout the game, have specific characters do certain things, meanwhile not telling them what the story plot was.
Because of this, Steelwool, in an effort to flesh out the game, started filling in the blanks themselves.
That didn't work out very well because they got all of these pieces and they thought it was their job to connect them in a way that made sense.
So what we got on launch day was a game that featured the pieces of Scott's original story and the story that Steelwool created to fill in the blanks.
And so really what you ended up having were the same pieces, but telling completely different stories.
This whole situation is fascinating to me, so I spent the last few months researching and analyzing Security Breach in order to find Scott's pieces of the game, all in an effort to figure out Scott's original story for Security Breach. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is find the pieces of Security Breach that belong to Scott, and there's actually a couple we already know about. Right before Security Breach released in December of 2021, Dawko did an interview with Steelwool Studios, where J-Top and Ray revealed that most of the arcade skins in the game came from Scott and his team.
One thing that you've already called out, like in videos, you know, so far, is noticing the arcade skins in the background.
Yes.
There are a lot.
There's a lot.
And the majority of them came from Scott. And he's got a team of artists, right?
This is important because not only do the arcade machines have references to every corner of the FNAF franchise, a lot of them also show GGY at the top of the leaderboards. This ends up being a major part of the story that we will come back to later. The next piece of Scott's original story actually comes from Scott himself. In the interview with Dawko, Scott revealed that in his version of the story, Burn Trap was never supposed to move.
When it comes to Burn Trap, originally Burn Trap was never supposed to move. He was supposed to just be something you saw in the corners, or like if you were walking past machinery, you might be able to peek in between two things and see him in the corner or propped up against a wall, almost like some kind of decaying movie prop.
This is one of many things that Scott revealed in this interview, so I'll be referring back to this interview throughout the video.
As I said, that's another one of those things that I believe was in the Cawthon cut. Again, a mod somebody made for Security Breach, that they actually had that, where in several places, like in the main Rockstar row, above the hallway, there's a window leading to an office, and I think at one point when you're in Freddy's green room, if you look out the window up into that window, you can see like Burn Trap just standing in the window looking down, but then when you leave the room, he's gone. So like...
The next piece of Scott's original story that I'm going to include are the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. While I don't think they're in the same continuity as the games, I do think Scott was using them to point us in the right direction after Security Breach. So I think it's fair to use them at least as supporting evidence. So far, we have a decent amount of pieces, but those ones were actually the easy ones for me to figure out. These next pieces are definitely the biggest ones and required a lot more research. In my hunt to figure out what parts of Security Breach belong to Scott, my biggest breakthrough came from a website called Voices.com. If you don't know already, back when Scott was making the FNAF games on his own, he used Voices.com to find and hire voice actors. This is how he found most, if not all, of the voice actors for his games, including for Security Breach. This is interesting because even though Scott was no longer making the games, he still personally chose and worked with some of the voice actors for Security Breach. I say
didn't know
some
that.
because in my research, I found that out of all of the voice actors in Security Breach, Scott himself only hired 3 of them using Voices.com. So by figuring out what voice actors Scott personally worked with, we can figure out what parts of the story likely belong to him. According to Voices.com, the first voice actor that Scott hired for Security Breach was Matthew Curtis. And what's interesting about this is that Matthew's voice doesn't even show up in the game. It shows up in the trailer for the game. Matthew was hired around January 28th, 2021, 1 month before the first gameplay trailer for Security Breach.
Oh my god, wait, did he do that voice? I think it was in that trailer where it's like, "You will bring him back to me right now," or I forget, but like, there was that one, in that trailer, there was this one random voice that called out, it's like, "You will bring him back to me," and then it never actually appeared in the actual video game.
In this trailer, we heard this voice for the first time.
When I first found you, you were nothing. You will do as I say! You will bring me what I want!
This was the first and the last time we heard from this character, and it turns out that even Matthew himself had no idea what character he was voicing. When a fan asked him if the character was William Afton, he responded, "Honestly, I don't know. I was never given a character name, but was told to expect more to do as the character in the future. It never panned out." This is yet another example of how secretive Scott was being about the story. Judging by Scott's review on Matthew's page saying, "Great working with Matthew, super fast turnaround," I am fully convinced that all of the voice lines in this trailer were written by Scott. And on top of that, even the style of this trailer is very similar to how Scott used to make his trailers back in the day.
Scott Trainer!
It's just like an old FNAF trailer, I'm gonna cry. It's just like an old FNAF trailer! In my opinion, it seems like Scott was heavily involved in the making of this trailer, but to be fair, Matthew isn't the only one speaking in the trailer. We also get some lines from Vanessa, voiced by Heather Masters.
Gregory, we can get you out of here. You and me together.
Even though there's no
You and
proof
me
that
together,
Heather was
right.
also hired using Voices.com, she's already been working with Scott for years at this point, so I don't think he would need to use Voices.com to hire her.
You and me together, God, this game was such a development nightmare. Honestly, I honestly do feel sorry for the people at the people of Steelwall, because on the one hand, with like, I guess, with how like the culture around FNAF and the finding its lore, you know, developed, I can kind of see why Scott would want to be so secretive. I mean, part of the reason for FNAF's popularity is just the rabid nature at which people, you know, were like digging through everything to figure out the full story and stuff like that. So, you know, him wanting to continue that and to make sure that there were no leaks when he's starting working with a much larger team, again, I can see that. But again, I would, if I ever had the chance to, I would definitely want to figure out, or even just ask Scott for his mind, his process of thought, or just for his thought process there about like how he thought, you know, giving the people who were actually making the game no idea what the story of the game actually was going to actually work out.
So I think it's safe to assume that if Matthew's lines were written by Scott, Heather's lines probably were too. So the first gameplay trailer of Security Breach is officially deemed a Scott piece of the story.
Yeah, but what about the other
that's not
voices?
all. We still have 2 voice actors left that were hired by Scott using Voices.com, and they are easily the most important. According to Voices.com, the final 2 voice actors that Scott hired for Security Breach were Leah Voicey and Penny Balfour, 2 of the therapists from the retro CDs.
Oh.
As you probably know, the therapy CDs are the most lore-filled part of the game, so the fact that they could have been 100% written by Scott would be a huge reveal. So I needed to make sure that I was right about this. Scott could have easily hired and worked with all of the voice actors for Security Breach, and only used Voices.com to find some of them. So, in order to figure this out, I watched every single interview, panel, and Q&A from every voice actor in Security Breach to learn who hired them and who they specifically worked with, Scott or Steel Wool. Here's what I found. Martis Fedek, who voices Gregory, Vanny, and Roxy, has mentioned being hired by Steel Wool and also working directly with Steel Wool.
I met somebody who ended up then later coming on board with Steel Wool Studios. He asked me to audition for Roxanne and Gregory.
It's really cool working with the Steel Wool guys because it's easy to be comfortable working with them.
Yeah.
You know, you met them. Like,
Yeah,
they're
on
just,
Steel
like,
are
they talk
amazing.
Ryan.
The same goes for Cameron Miller, who voices Monty.
I was doing things on stage. My director is actually married to one of the producers at Steel Wolf. He goes, well, actually, we have this game if you want to audition for it.
When it comes to Kellen Goff, who voices Glamrock Freddy and Sun and Moon, things are slightly different. Kellen has stated that Scott personally hired him to voice Glamrock Freddy, but after he got the job, Scott sent him to work directly with Steel Wool.
Then I see this alligator. Maybe I could ask Scott if he's holding auditions for that one. He responded saying, actually, I had something else in mind for you. Would you like to read for Freddy? And I sent over what would be the first words of Glamrock Freddy, and he said, yep, that's it. I'm going to connect you with the Steel Wool guys.
I couldn't find any information about Heather.
I mean, that I can kind of understand, because again, you know, Scott already had worked with him before. I mean, actually at this point, I think almost every Freddy that has had a voice has been voiced by him. So I guess there's the working connection there.
Their Masters, who voices Vanessa and Glamrock Chica, but since she's also a veteran of the series, I think it's safe to assume she went through the same thing as Kellen. Hired on by Scott, but then was sent to work with Steel Wool. So basically, any line in the game that came from the Glamrocks, daycare attendant, Vanessa, Vanny, or Gregory were likely, for the most part, not entirely written by Scott, since all of the voice actors for these characters recorded their lines directly with Steel Wool. That then leaves Leah Voicey and Penny Balfour from the Therapy CDs. Maybe Scott did the same thing with them as he did with Kellen, hired them on and then sent them to work with Steel Wool to record their lines. But that's not the case, because after scrolling through 5 years worth of reviews on Leah Voicey's profile, I found a review left by Scott where he said Leah did great and nailed it on the first take. This heavily implies that he was the one that worked directly with Leah and Penny on the Therapy CDs. This is in addition to Scott saying Matthew Curtis had a super fast turnaround and Penny Balfour was a pleasure to work with. I am fully convinced that the Therapy CDs were written by Scott and are a piece of his original story for Security Breach. What's funny about this is that the Therapy CDs were a huge reason Security Breach was so confusing, but now with this new information, we know why it was so confusing. When the game first came out, we all played through it normally and got all of the endings. This was, for the most part, the Steel Wool portion of the game. Every voice line you heard was recorded with Steel Wool in the room, and most of the story beats you experienced were likely written by Steel Wool as well. It wasn't until you took that extra step at the end of the game to find and listen to the CDs that the story started to get confusing.
Oh god, yeah. Again, it's the whole problem with it is, again, you basically have like two very distinct sections of like narrative. You have, again, the Steel Wool section, which, you know, is all the endings, and again is basically, you know, I mean, granted, you know, I'd have to actually go back to the story how it was originally and see what people thought of it, because I can't remember, but it was at least coherent. But then you plopped on the tapes, or the CDs, I should say, and they just kind of muddled up everything else.
This is the moment Scott's original story started clashing with Steel Wool's. So now that we have all of Scott's pieces of the game, let's figure out the story he was trying to tell. The main thing I learned while piecing this together is that the Therapy CDs are the foundation of Scott's story. Every single Scott piece of the game ties back into those CDs in some way, and here's how. There are 16 CDs, with 8 of them being therapy sessions with Vanessa, and the other 8 being therapy sessions with Gregory. In Vanessa's CDs, there's really only 2 big topics they touch on: Vanessa's traumatic childhood and a conversation she's been having with someone on her work computer. Let's start with her childhood. We learn that Vanessa has a dad named Bill, and when the therapist brings him up, Vanessa immediately gets uncomfortable.
I feel like I know your dad, too. Bill, right? I'm sorry, what did you say?
I try to do what I'm supposed to do.
We then learn about how Vanessa was manipulated by her dad when she was young.
I'm talking about the custody battle between your mum and your dad. Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. I suppose I don't need you to tell me it felt bad to have a parent scare you into saying things that weren't true.
God, honestly, the one thing I remember from these was the theory that going around at the time that Vanessa was actually like William's child. Again, you know, William Bill. but then it was kind of the consensus was made that, you know, it was just a coincidence, and she was not so much a coincidence, but she was being, you know, like, picked and groomed by like the glitch trap virus to, like, specifically because of that, to like mold her into like a surrogate Afton child or something like that.
He manipulated you. It wasn't your fault.
Vanessa's dad forced her to lie about her mom in court so he could maintain custody of her. Vanessa's backstory is something people didn't really talk about for a while after the game came out. And this is because with her dad being named Bill, which is short for William, him being pure evil and manipulating his kid, and Vanessa's name in FNAF AR being Vanessa A, it seems that Vanessa might actually be an Afton. This was almost immediately written off by people because Vanessa didn't really exist in the story until now. As far as we knew, Afton only had 3 kids, Michael, Elizabeth, and the crying child. But then, 2 years after Security Breach, the FNAF movie came out, featuring a character named Vanessa who looks exactly like Vanessa in the games and is the daughter of William Afton. But it doesn't stop there. We get another therapy CD about Vanessa's dad, where the therapist gives her advice on how to deal with her trauma.
Are you talking about your dad? You can't just ignore an issue. You have to face your memory of the experiences and process them so you can let it go, so you don't get triggered anymore.
The therapist tells her to face the memory of her traumatic experiences with her dad so she can process them and let them go. This is the exact same advice Vanessa is given in the FNAF 2 movie.
You remember how I would use my dreams to confront what happened with Garrett? It really helped me a lot. I think it can help you too.
You have to face your memory of the experiences and process them so you can let it go.
I don't think that's a good idea.
I don't like doing that.
She then literally faces the traumatic memories with her dad head on in an effort to overcome them. In the games, we learn that Vanessa's dad is extremely possessive of her, with him making her lie in court so he can maintain custody of her. This extremely possessive trait is also something we see from Afton in the movies.
You will always be mine. You shall always be mine.
This is where the first piece of Scott's original story comes into play, and it's something he said in his interview with Dawko. Scott revealed that he told Steelwool to put specific items in specific places.
I was trying to tell Steelwool to do specific things throughout the game. Put specific items in specific places. Have specific characters do certain things.
Well, when it comes to putting specific items in specific places, the only Scott piece of the game that's put in a very specific place are the therapy CDs, which were put in the Afton's living room from sister location. Scott goes on to say this.
In my head, I was thinking, okay, when people find this, they will connect this to this to this, and it will all be revealed.
Maybe he thought when we found the Afton's living room, we'd connect it to the CDs and therefore connect Vanessa and her dad, William, to the Aftons. When Dawko interviewed Steelwool, he asked them if there would be any Easter eggs in the game, in which Ray McCaffrey responded,
"Will there be any Easter eggs in Security Breach?"
You know, as we're building the game, I get an email from Scott. It says, "Hey, put this stuff in the game, examine it as a producer would do," and I say, I have no idea what any of this means. He goes, "Yeah, put it in the game. Don't worry, I know."
To me, it sounds like he's talking about the Afton's living room from sister location and the therapy CDs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could definitely see it's like, yeah, I have no idea how this fits or works into anything. Yeah, I know, just do it. Again, it pointing towards Vanessa being another Afton. Like, how many kids does the Aftons have, and why has Vanessa just never shown up if that's the case? I mean, the only way I could possibly think of that is, you know, pointing towards, you know, where, you know, sister location takes place in the timeline. Sister location happens first. Not Vanessa. Elizabeth gets killed, and the girls' room we see in the mini games in FNAF 4 is Vanessa's. That's the only way I could potentially see it, and the only reason we don't see her is because she's not at the house. She's at like a friend's house, or, you know, she's with her mom, or whatever.
Dawko specifically asked about Easter eggs, and the Afton living room is a huge Easter egg in the game, but at the same time, the therapy CDs in that room were likely something sent to them by Scott with no explanation.
I I have no idea what any of this means. He goes, yeah.
The next huge piece of Scott's original story involves the second topic in Vanessa's therapy CDs, the conversation she's having with someone on her work computer. These conversations are brought up 3 separate times by 3 separate therapists. This is because every time a therapist brings up the conversations, they're swapped out.
A routine check of your online history has revealed that you've spent quite a bit of time with someone in an encrypted conversation.
Honestly, you know, thinking about it, with everything that happens, especially with like the weird mystery like Afton room, it just somewhere in the Pizzaplex. The fact that, again, you only see the door after flashing a light against the wall to cause a door to magically appear. I can guarantee you that alone causes so much confusion to everybody, especially to me. Ideally, you know how you could have fixed it. Like, have it be like not just a flash, you know, or something. Have it be hidden behind like a fake wall. That like it was put there secretly, so normal people don't know. But there's somebody who like either know a code or some way, and like the wall opens up and there's the fake door. You open it up and hey, you're in the living room, or something like that.
Hi, go ahead. Sit down.
I don't know you. What happened to...
Oh, we'll get to know each other in no time.
This happens 4 times over the 16 CDs, totaling 5 different therapists. The first 3 voiced by Michelle Amos, and the final 2 voiced by Leah Voicey and Penny Balfour. The therapists tell Vanessa that whoever she's talking to has hacked into her personal files.
This person who's been sending you messages has been hacking into your personal files too. These are the same files I have here. This person who is contacting you knows a lot about you.
They also tell Vanessa that it looks like this person is manipulating her.
The messages you're getting seem very manipulative in nature.
With that in mind, let's move on to Gregory's therapy CDs. And the thing about Gregory's is that he never actually says anything out loud in any of his 8 CDs.
So you're not talking to me again today. This isn't all that productive, you know.
The only reason we know that these belong to Gregory is because Scott confirmed it in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. There's also multiple moments in the CDs where the therapist implies that they're talking to a child.
You don't want me to get in trouble, do you? I could be put in the corner for a timeout. Yeah, you think that's funny, huh?
But there's also another way I think Scott intended for us to figure this out. And that's through the next piece of Scott's story, the arcade skins he gave to Steel Wool. Like we established earlier, most of the arcade skins for the game came from Scott and his artists. And one thing about the arcade machines is that Gregory is at the top of the leaderboard on a lot of them. This is something we all overlooked until the story GGY from the Tales books was released. In the story GGY, we learned that Gregory is hacking into the arcade machines at the Pizzaplex in order to get the highest scores. And wouldn't you know, one of the main things we learn about Patient 46 is that they're an extremely skilled hacker.
I'm surprised by your knowledge of computers. You're something of a phenom. Do you know what that word means? It means you have unusual skill, like a hacker.
Since Patient 46 never speaks in the therapy CDs, Scott maybe thought we'd figure out their identity by learning that Patient 46 is a hacker, and then connecting that to Gregory's absurdly high scores on the arcade machines. Even though it definitely seems far-fetched, I honestly can't think of any other reason Scott would put Gregory at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, when you actually put it out there, I can definitely see the line of progression, like the thought progression that needs to go for those. But again, at the same time, like, I mean, like, especially when the game first came out, like, there wasn't really any reason to pay attention to the arcade machines in the first place because you didn't interact with them. Like, at the very most, you used them as obstacles to be between you and whatever was currently hunting you. So most people, unless they were specifically looking around, wouldn't really look at the high scores of them. Plus, I mean, maybe it's just me, but when I see GGY, the first thing that comes to my head is not Gregory. I don't know what it comes up as. Honestly, when I think about it, GGY just makes me think it's like an acronym for giggity. I don't know what I would put down for Gregory as a 3-letter like nickname. But that's probably just a me problem.
But anyways, back to Gregory's therapy CDs. After revealing that Gregory is a hacker, the therapist brings up an encrypted conversation that Gregory is having. with someone.
They say you were in communication with someone. The texts say it looked to them like it was an attempt to manipulate you.
Then the therapist reveals that Gregory wasn't the one being manipulated in these conversations, he was the one doing the manipulating.
Thing is, when I read the communications, I get something different out of them. I don't think you're being manipulated here. I think you're the one doing the manipulating.
So we have Vanessa, who's being manipulated by someone in an encrypted conversation, and then we have Gregory, who is manipulating someone in an encrypted conversation. This is Scott clearly telling us that Gregory is the one communicating with and manipulating Vanessa. Like I said earlier, every time a therapist brought up these encrypted conversations, they were swapped out. And in the Tales books, Scott revealed that this was because of Gregory. Gregory would lure each therapist to the Pizzaplex to have them killed. This is something that Scott heavily hinted towards in the therapy CDs as well. In the therapy CDs, Gregory is being told that the therapists are showing up dead, and he doesn't care.
Apparently, all 3 of your former therapists have gone missing. One of them was found dead. That doesn't seem to upset you. Well, then I guess I'll go ahead and tell you that the woman's body was pretty messed up. That doesn't bother you either?
This screams to me that Gregory was fully under the control of Glitchtrap, and this was basically confirmed in the books as well. Gregory's nickname in the books is literally the wizard's most favored apprentice. So not only is he under the control of Glitchtrap, he's talking to and manipulating Vanessa on the behalf of Glitchtrap. Scott brings up these conversations so many times in the therapy CDs, so they must be important. Which leads into our next question: what were Gregory and Vanessa talking about in these conversations?
God, you know what this I just remembered like an old bit of lore. I think this was just around like the first Help Wanted. And I specifically remember the reluctant follower. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that was what we all thought that Vanessa was. She was the reluctant follower. She was doing what she was told, but she wasn't quite fully on board. So with all of this, I can very much believe that, you know, maybe Gregory, being a child, is very much more easy to manipulate, so that's why he was, like, fully under Glitchtrap's control. So Glitchtrap was using Gregory to manipulate and try to get Vanessa, the grown woman, more under his control as well.
Well, what if I told you that we've already heard a piece of these conversations 7 years ago? On October 23rd, 2019, we got the Curse of Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted. In this DLC, we get our first look at the Vanny mask.
Right, yeah.
And if you put it on while at the prize counter, you can hear Vanessa start to have a conversation with someone. In this conversation, she talks about the Vanny costume that she's creating.
Yes, I hear you. There's no miscommunication. I understand. No one suspects anything. Yes, I have it. I made it myself. I think you would like it.
This is the conversation that's brought up multiple times in the therapy CDs where Gregory is manipulating Vanessa. I know this because Vanessa is also confronted about this Vanny costume in the therapy CDs.
Though, I mean, at the same time, it doesn't help that, you know, Vanessa's voice actress changed, so I mean, at least for me, that also kind of confused me.
But once that happens, she says this.
It looks like you were shopping for a costume. What was that? Did you say the costume is a secret?
I can't talk about this. He said he would always be watching. He could be here, or there, or anywhere in between.
On top of all of that, after doing a little bit of research, I found that the voice actor for these specific lines from Help Wanted, Jesse Tang, was also hired by and worked directly with Scott, just like the therapists in the CDs. With him saying Jessica was terrific, she took direction well, and turnaround was very fast. So the idea that this conversation from Help Wanted and the therapy CDs are connected would make sense considering they were both directly written by Scott. These conversations were a huge part of Scott's original story, but it doesn't stop there. There's another piece of security breach that I believe belongs to Scott that we haven't talked about yet. In the therapy CDs, Gregory takes an ink blot test.
I saw some ink blot test results in your file. I like ink blot tests. You want to do one?
Gregory then takes the ink blot and says this.
How about this one? What do you see? You think it's a mask? Like a disguise? You like the idea of being disguised? Disguises let you be sort of invisible, don't they? You can get away with almost anything when you're invisible, can't you? Yeah, You like that idea?
Not only does Gregory see a mask, he specifically added the line, "Disguises let you be sort of invisible. You can get away with almost anything when you're invisible." Why would Scott include this? Because it directly connects to one of the only times we see Vanny in Security Breach.
What was that?
That is a fountain.
Not the fountain. You didn't see the dancing rabbit lady right in front of us?
No, I did not.
Vanny is literally invisible when she's wearing the Vanny mask.
Yes, I have it. I think you would like it.
You like the idea of being disguised? You can get away with almost anything when you're invisible, can't you?
Oh God! Again, again, I've said it before, but again, with everything, with the entire mess that was, Security Breach story-wise. Again, like I've said it before, I feel so sorry for the animatronics here. Because unlike with the previous ones, the animatronics themselves are already seemingly sentient outside of all just the supernatural weirdness that is just constant in, the FNAF universe. And they just seem constantly manipulated by it, or people that are manipulated by it and stuff like that. And again, it's like we got some of that in Ruin for Roxy, but I very much hope that at the very least, and it does seem that Freddy has at least, he's with Gregory now as a head, so we don't know how that's going to turn out eventually. But I very much hope that at least for the rest of the Glamrocks, they at least get some sort of happy closure. I mean, maybe not so much for Montgomery. He seemed very mean, but at the very least for Chica, because she's the only one so far that hasn't had any form of closure.
This is something Scott doubled down on in Ruin. Whenever Cassie puts on the Vanny mask, she literally becomes invisible to the animatronics. And for those people who, rightfully so, say that the Vanny mask and the Vanny costume look completely different, Scott and Steelwool included this scene in Ruin to clear that up.
It's Gregory. Hey, she's wearing my mask.
This was very clearly shoehorned into the game to answer the question of, is the Vanny mask and the Vanny costume the same thing? And it turns out that even though they look different, they are the same thing. Like we talked about earlier, Scott told Steelwool to put specific items in specific places in Security Breach, but he also told them to do specific things throughout the game and have specific characters do certain things. I think this is what he was talking about. Scott telling Steelwool to put this specific scene in the game makes sense, considering it directly links to what he wrote in the therapy CDs.
But he didn't tell them how to dress, so he ended up having a rabbit lady with a completely different mask. Honestly, with everything that happened here, I very much hope that Scott learned his lesson and doesn't keep secrets from the people that are literally making his games.
So now that we know that Gregory was fully under the control of Glitchtrap, a lot of pieces start falling into place. Gregory the hacker is the one who hacked into Vanessa's personal files.
It means you have unusual skill, like a hacker. This person who's been sending you messages has been hacking into your personal files too.
He did this to keep tabs on Vanessa's sessions, to make sure that she's not saying too much about their conversations. We also learn in the CDs that Gregory completely lied about having a traumatic childhood.
None of what you said in your file about your parents was true. The truth is, you had great parents, a great childhood. Why did you lie?
I think he lied about his past so he could have a reason to meet with the therapist. He's actually a normal kid that had a great childhood, but by pretending he has childhood trauma, he's able to get in with the same therapist as Vanessa. And if he finds out that Vanessa told them too much, he'd kill them off. In Vanessa's last 2 therapy tapes, we learn that she's about to be transferred to work at the Pizzaplex.
I understand you'll be transferring to a different location soon.
After Vanessa was transferred, we learned that Gregory was spotted talking to Vanny at the Pizzaplex.
I have this still shot the text pulled from the security footage that recorded you in the Pizzaplex. You're talking to someone or something. What are those things? They almost look like rabbit ears.
After only speaking through encrypted conversations, Vanessa and Gregory are now at the Pizzaplex talking in person. This was obviously supposed to be the big twist of the game. Gregory wasn't this random kid who just so happened to get trapped in the Pizzaplex. He was working with Vanny the whole time. And Scott actually had this planned since the beginning. Earlier, we figured out that Scott personally hired and worked with the voice actors for the first gameplay trailer for Security Breach. And you can hear presumably Glitchtrap say this.
You will do as I say. you will bring me what I want. And if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn!
The both of you line was always confusing, but knowing what we know now, both of you was referencing Vanessa and Gregory.
Which, again, I gotta think, so, like, if that's the case, then in the earliest version, maybe, again, maybe we'd still be playing as Gregory, but it's the whole thing we're learning, like, as we go along, just how evil Gregory is, that he's on the Glitchtrap side, or that he's, you know, under Glitchtrap's control and stuff like that. God, though. How would that have worked out? Would you have had the choice of, like, at some point, getting out of Glitchtrap's control, and that's why that dialogue would have been said, or what was going to happen?
Who were both under the control of Glitchtrap. Gregory being under the control of Glitchtrap is obviously a big twist, but there's another piece of Scott's original story that I believe was going to be a bigger twist. In Help Wanted, one of the only lines of dialogue that Glitchtrap has is this. This is him repeating a line that was said by Tape Girl.
Hello? Can you hear me?
This led people to believe that Scott had some version of the Mimic AI in mind since Help Wanted, and I think that's entirely possible, considering what we learned from the therapy CDs. There's one line from the therapy CDs that I haven't seen many people talk about, and it's something the therapist says to Gregory.
Is it the electronics you like? I saw in your file that you have developed software programs that talk to you and repeat phrases, right? The program asks you questions and prompts you for responses.
What? Gregory has developed software programs that talk to him and repeat phrases. If we take this line literally, it seems to be heavily implying that Gregory created some version of what we now know as the Mimic AI.
Either created or very much maybe had a version, he built like a computer and had it installed on there. Maybe it was the original one, who knows?
Obviously, this did not end up being the case because we have Edwin, but when Scott originally wrote these CDs, could that have been the plan? It's definitely not impossible, especially since Scott has explored this concept before. What we've learned...
Honestly, you talk about robots and Gregory, and the one thing that I remember is just the robot Gregory theory, which, God, I hated. And I know a lot of other people hated.
Over the years is that sometimes Scott will introduce a concept in a previous book or game, and then years later reuse it for something else. For example, the entire concept and story of the Mimic was explored by Scott before FNAF even existed. In Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. Quote, "There comes a time when all a beaver's rage and sorrow are poured into something, and it becomes stronger than himself. It reminds me of the time that I built an exact duplicate of myself, with fur and everything, but the silly thing didn't realize that it was a lumber bot and tried to take over the place. I had to whack it with a shovel and bury it. Can you imagine a robot thinking he was the real thing? Ha, bleep bloop, whoa, excuse me." Obviously, Scott has themes and story ideas that he's been fascinated by for a long time, including the idea of a rogue AI program, and the themes surrounding Gregory are no exception to that. The concept of a child prodigy creating an AI that was built to talk and repeat phrases is another idea Scott has explored before. In the Silver Eyes trilogy, Charlie is a child prodigy who invents an AI that talks to itself and learns on its own. She put the AI into two endoskeleton heads that repeat, "Hello, you, I, you are, am I?" When Charlie's friend asks her what she's programming them to do, she responds, "I'm not exactly programming them to do anything. I'm helping them to learn on their own." This is the one and only time this is brought up in the entire book series, which makes me think that this was Scott testing out the idea of an extremely talented kid creating a rogue AI program. Although he never expanded upon it in the Silver Eyes, I think he could have been picking it back up with Gregory. But there's one detail that could make or break this whole explanation. If Gregory was already under the control of Glitchtrap when he made the program, Glitchtrap obviously made him create it, and I think that probably is the case. The therapist says that while Gregory was talking to the program, program, it sounded like someone started responding to him.
When I study this, it sounds like there is someone else responding to you. Who is it?
I think this program was how he would communicate with Glitchtrap or Vanessa. Although
honestly, yeah, that does make the most sense, because again, with what we thought at the time, everybody assumed that it was like Afton who would come back, because like, oh, he'd gone from hell, but then you had Burntrap that somehow existed, or you had those old circuit boards from Help Wanted, and like, instead of being put into an animatronic, like at William's soul or a copy of it, or again, just the Mimic AI, a copy, like a program that thought it was Afton was now, you know, doing its thing, but it was just a disembodied program that had taken control of people's minds.
Though that line about Gregory creating essentially the Mimic AI is super weird. And until we get an explanation, those are the two possible ways I think it could be interpreted. Now it's time to talk about arguably the biggest thing we learned about Scott's original story. Burntrap was never supposed to move, and based on what Scott is saying, it seems like he was almost supposed to be an Easter egg. Like if you look between two objects, you'll see Burntrap just chilling in the corner. Scott said that Burntrap did have a specific purpose, but he decided not to share it.
And you never fully understood what his purpose was. And he had a very specific purpose. And I'm not going to say what that purpose was, but realistically, he never moved.
So in order to understand what Burntrap is, we first need to understand what Glitchtrap is. There is a lot of debate about if Glitchtrap is the actual spirit of William Afton, or if it's just the Mimic program mimicking William Afton.
Honestly, I've said before that I miss the more supernatural elements of the franchise, where like you had actual ghosts possessing machines and stuff like that. But I was always like, I was always much more attracted to the Mimic program, or Glitchtrap being like the Mimic that thought it was William Afton. I mean, we already had the Mimic thing where it was like, you know, it copied stuff, and on top of that, you know, God, what was it? It was a video that MatPat did. But it was like talking about the various arcs of, you know, of FNAF, where like, oh, we moved on from the we moved on from the Afton era to like the Glitchtrap era or something like that. And I very much kind of did like that finality, like, oh, is FNAF moving into a new era? Like the antagonist there was, he had gotten his comeuppance. He was in Ultimate Custom Night, just like not purposely, but just like endlessly going through the torment that he put so many people through over the years. And it seemed like a very, you know, a nice way to bookend the story. And how you produce a new like era of the story is, oh hey, now there's a literal copycat killer who thinks that he's Afton.
And I think it's a little bit of both. In the Doco interview, Scott actually shared his thoughts on Glitchtrap by saying,
I love the character, but I can't help my inclinations to lean sci-fi. So anything that involves possession of AI or possession of machines or circuitry, that I love that sort of thing. So I love the idea of Glitchtrap.
I think Scott was being pretty clear when he said that Glitchtrap is the result of a spirit possessing an AI program. And I think that AI is the Mimic program, and the spirit possessing it is William Afton. In Help Wanted, it's very clear that Glitchtrap wanted out of the VR game.
It wants to escape through someone plugged into this game. That's, you know.
He wanted to re-enter the physical world, and at the time, his only way of doing that was through Vanessa. But now that Glitchtrap was successfully controlling Vanessa, he had a new goal, and this goal can be heard in Scott's security breach trailer.
You will do as I say. You will bring me what I want, and if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn!
He wants Vanessa and Gregory to bring him something, and I think that something is what we see at the end of the trailer.
There is more going on here than you realize.
Glitchtrap wants a physical body to inhabit, but not just any physical body, his body. The Pizzaplex just so happens to be built on top of the FNAF 6 pizzeria, where Afton's corpse lies. This shot with the purple lighting and everything feels like it's screaming at us that Afton is back. I genuinely think Burntrap was, and maybe still is, actually William Afton's corpse. And the reason we were supposed to see glimpses of him propped up against a wall and lifeless is because Vanessa hasn't put Glitchtrap into it yet. Seeing a lifeless Burntrap as an Easter egg might have acted as a hint towards what Vanessa was up to at the Pizzaplex.
There is more going on here than you realize.
Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can definitely get behind that. I mean, and thinking about it, that does kind of get around some of the foibles that people had about the idea of about like a Burntrap being actually Afton and stuff like that. Because, you know, people very much questioned, like, oh, he's supposed to be an ultimate custom knight. Or, you know, he went through the fire, so there shouldn't be, like, any of him left. And on top of, you know, being left buried underground, decomposing for how many more years after, you know, Pizzeria Simulator. But, like, if you took his body, or whatever remained of the animatronic, upgraded it with seemingly more modern parts, and you have a possessed computer program just controlling it like any other computer program. Yeah, you know what? I can definitely see that. I do like that. Because then, it does kind of get rid of the finality of, oh, it's the Afton era, the Mimic era, and stuff like that. I do like it where it's an escalation. Where before you had the singular killer in a singular body. It was Afton, but he was stuck in an animatronic, so, you know, that's him, and we try to get rid of him. But now he's a literal computer program that can come into literally any piece of machinery. So it's an escalation of the threat, which, yeah, I can imagine that's definitely... I mean, would that be jumping the shark? I mean, granted, in the books there was the giant, like, junk robot made of agony, so I guess FNAF kind of jumped the shark a while ago, but who knows? It's all about how it's handled.
This is what I think Scott's original idea for Burntrap was. Is it still true? I honestly think so, and that's because of what we see in Help Wanted 2. In one of the endings, we see Glitchtrap's hand coming out of the charging pod in the exact same way Burntrap's did, obviously connecting Glitchtrap to Burntrap. And then in the Princess Quest ending, a giant Vanny crushes Glitchtrap in her hands. Help Wanted 2 kind of felt like the we're sorry for bringing Afton back again, so let's get rid of him real quick game. In my interview with Steelwool Studios, J-Top made it very clear that this was the end for Glitchtrap.
This is, you know, the end of Glitchtrap.
So it is the end of Glitchtrap. Squished. Gone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This really feels like them moving on from the William Afton part of Glitchtrap, so we can now focus on the Mimic AI part of Glitchtrap. What's interesting to me about the things I found while researching for this video is that it all could still be true. Things like Gregory being under the control of Glitchtrap and working with Vanny, Vanessa maybe being an Afton, Gregory creating a version of the Mimic AI, and Burntrap literally being Afton's corpse reanimated by Glitchtrap are all things that could still be true in the current story. But my biggest takeaway from this is that Security Breach could really benefit from a solid prequel. Imagine a game where we learn how Gregory fell under the control of Glitchtrap, and how Gregory broke free from Glitchtrap's control, with the game ending right where Security Breach begins. I want you to know that I could be wrong about literally everything I talked about in this video. Scott is the only one who knows what story he was trying to tell, so don't take everything I said here as fact.
Which, yeah, saying that is probably kind of sad, because that means that for a while now, Scott has been doing nothing but damage control, trying to get his story back on track.
Despite the communication issues surrounding Security Breach, the story that was presented in that game is the story we've got. And the most recent games seem to prove that Scott and Steelwool are back on the same page.
You know, me and Steelwool got together, we were like, look, all that matters now is making things right by the fan base. And anything that we do going forward that continues that story or has those same themes, I think we're just going to be in a much, much better situation to continue on.
I just thought it would be fun to try and figure out for myself what Scott's original story for Security Breach was. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.
Oh, okay, that's it. I thought the video was gonna be longer. Wow. Oh god. But yeah, honestly, again, I mean, for all of its faults, I really did love Security Breach. Like, I did love the story. I liked you know, the world that it was building. I mean, like, of course, you know, for the longest time, you know, the fandom had the idea that Fazbear was this perpetually failing company. But then we see the Pizzaplex where it's like this massive, like, mall and stuff like that. And while I can get some people not liking that, on the other hand, I do kind of like the thing where it's like Fazbear succeeds basically despite itself. Where, like, it keeps making all these horrible decisions, and it just keeps chugging on. Bigger and better than ever. And honestly, thinking about it, like, if that really is the end of Glitch Trap, I really wish there was a bit more ceremony to it, because, like, what we got... I mean, like, I could very much imagine, you know, that whole bit being, you know, like, Vanny no longer being under the control of Glitch Trap, or something like that, and Glitch Trap is still there, or something... But that's not how they're going to play things out. I mean, who knows? But yeah, that is definitely going to be it for now. So yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. And last but not least, a very special thank you to my YouTube and Patreon supporters. Honestly, I am extremely thankful to anybody that thinks I'm worth it.